Hi, Jillian. Nice to meet you. Congrats a lot for
Thank
your
you.
award.
Yeah, I'm very excited, super excited.
Yeah, yeah. What was the award about? Can you tell us more?
I was at the CC Forum last week in
Mm-hmm.
London, and it was a 2-day event. I was actually
Uh-huh.
co-chairing it, but they had awards. On the first night, they had like 6 different awards, and one of them was for the blockchain and AI journalist for 2019. Woo!
Wow, that's really amazing. Yeah.
So I was very excited.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. So we will start from the beginning. So can you tell us more about your journey with in the field of journalism and what brought you with the entire Blockleader thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I have 30 years experience in fintech. My first job was with
Wow.
JP Morgan that's the
Mm-hmm.
appropriate response, by the way.
That's
My first
beautiful.
job was with JP Morgan in London when I left
Yeah.
college as a
Mm-hmm.
systems analyst. And then I worked in London and then Australia and Singapore and then back to Ireland. But so I was in
Wow.
fintech. I was doing a mixture of PR and then increasingly more and more journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Really enjoyed it, and I lived through the dot-com boom and crash. That was very interesting times. And
Uh-huh.
then I hit a personal sort of epiphany and disaster, whatever, in the financial crash in 2008, because I hit a perfect storm where my marriage broke down and the market crashed here in Ireland. It was a very, very, very bad crash because we had the Celtic
Mm-hmm.
Tiger directly before
Mm-hmm.
it. So anyway, my ex went back to the UK and he gave all the debt to myself and our 2 children. That was my divorce present. I got it wrong somehow. Most women, when they get
Mm-hmm.
divorced, they get the car, they get the second home. I got all the bills. So
Okay.
I was living in this big house. I moved out of the big house, and I was trying to sell that big house because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't afford it anymore. Everything was going crazy. So I made a video, and the video went viral, and I went viral. So I ended up sort of being
Wow.
the face of austerity in Ireland, if you like, because my story kind of epitomized everything that was going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I got a cash offer to buy the house for 500,000. The mortgage was
Mm-hmm.
more than that, so the banks refused consent to sell, and they preferred to repossess it. And they sold it the following year, following January, for a tenth of its price. So in the midst of all
Oh.
this, my life's been turned upside down, personally with the divorce and all that, and then with losing the house, and then my business was failing because I was fighting on so many fronts. But in the midst of
Mm-hmm.
it all, I understood that there was this narrative that the banks were saying that the people were gaming the system. Ordinary folks were
Mm-hmm.
gaming the system. And I kind of went,
Yeah.
I've lost everything. And it's kind of tough, but I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do any pretending. I didn't gamble. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
steal, rob, whatever. So I got a bit angry, and the anger I got activated, became like an accidental activist, if you will. And so
Mm-hmm.
I began ranting and raving against the banks and how everything was wrong. And when the banks repossessed my home, I had no choice but to go bankrupt because we don't have parity of risk here with the banks. The laws are not the same in other countries.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was the first female bankrupt under the new laws. And then I realized that as a bankrupt, I wasn't allowed to run for public office because we had inherited arcane laws from the UK that said somehow being financially broken or failing financially was less than, it was a shameful thing. And I kind of went,
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I brought the Irish government to the High Court and the Supreme Court, and I argued that my constitutional rights were being infringed because I wasn't allowed to run for public office because I maintained I was a perfectly good citizen. And just because
Mm-hmm.
I'd failed financially did not make me a bad person or not fit for public service. So
100%.
I changed the law. Yay! It was kind of fun. And then
Yeah.
the next elections were the 2014 European Parliamentary elections. So
Mm-hmm.
I ran in that in Ireland South, and I got 11,500 votes with no money, no party, an independent. I was very proud of what I did. Not enough to get elected, but enough to make a
Mm-hmm.
difference. And then,
Yeah.
this is a long answer to your question, and then my world went quiet. Everything went very quiet. I was no longer a parliamentary candidate. I couldn't get
Mm-hmm.
work, everything just went very quiet. And about a year later, I bumped into blockchain. And I went, aha,
Wow.
that makes sense to me. Because when I was going through all my own personal stuff, it was about 10 years of this horrible crap stuff. I'm kind of a
Mm-hmm.
slow burner. It took me a long while to realize that that's not fair. That's not
Mm-hmm.
right. That's what's happening to these people. There's a lot of things that aren't right. But it took me a long time to discover that. And then when I met blockchain, I went, I see and what I love about blockchain is it's the ethos behind. It's not just about cryptocurrencies, although that is very interesting as well. That's fantastic. And the peer-to-peer transfer of value, amazing. But it's the ethos behind it. It's a lot of people working very, very hard, very smart people working very, very hard to create new ways of doing things, because our old ways are not working. You only have to look around the world at the moment to see they're not working.
Yeah. So the entire system which the blockchain was building, like the entire shift of, I mean, if it's safe to say power, but I would say like decision making and governance was actually shifting from like one body to the entire community. So was it that which attracted you towards it? Like in simple words, decentralization and, you know, distribution of power?
When I started to look into these things, I didn't notice them before, because when you're living your life, you just go along and you're grand and whatever. And then I started to look at things and I went, well, hang on. And you know, every year Davos, Oxfam publishes its report. And we know this, 1% of the population owns 80% of the wealth. That's worse than medieval times. That's worse.
Yeah.
I mean, our modern world is supposed to be about opportunity and equality, and we have advanced in many ways in those areas. You know, there's a lot more. In Ireland, we've got same-sex marriage. We have we've loads of women's rights are represented properly. Diversity is much better. So as a society as a whole across the world, we are engaging in improving equality of opportunity for everybody.
100%.
But other ways we're not. You know, in other ways, the centralized control of governments, of finance, they're keeping people down. And I think it's not that I'm an anarchist. You know, I'm a very middle class woman.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of going, this is not right. So that's what I love about the blockchain. It's like it's from the bottom up. It's for the people, by the people. It's by very intelligent, smart individuals who are building really interesting products and projects. And it democratizes opportunity. That for me is the big plus. And it's inclusive. It's inclusive.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree to that point. I mean, even if the companies and the projects which are working with blockchain right now, but still they are keeping the very fundamental ethic of the blockchain that, it is for the people, and the people need to have that say in the decision making, or their participation in the decision making. I mean, this gives like a very selfless feeling to the systems, and this is like, I mean, adding to this, I mean, what do you think that like blockchain is bringing to the traditional systems, or how it is changing the traditional systems, especially the financial systems which has existed since past?
I think it's blowing them out of the water. And what I love is, I was at a going. I know. Okay. But when I was in Cape Town earlier this year at a banking conference, actually, and it was there were a lot of very earnest bankers there saying we need to look at the unbanked. We need to bank Africans who are unbanked, and there was a huge talk. And then towards the end, there were some blockchain talks, and the guys are going, we don't want to bank the unbanked. We want to unbank the world. And it makes a lot of sense, because right now financial institutions do not serve us very well at all. They're all about the bottom line of the dollar and the shareholder value, and it's not about giving service and lending into the community and into businesses. Money needs to flow, of course. I mean, entrepreneurs need money and people need money, but at the moment the banks are only interested in profit and ruling the world. And that's not good. And also there are loads of studies, because you have a concentration in such a few small people, few small institutions, it means that bad decisions are made. Because there's a study's been done recently with Credit Suisse, Nordea and McKinsey, all saying that when you bring diversity into the decision-making process, everything improves. And when you have only one or two people controlling stuff, they make bad decisions on behalf of the rest of humanity.
100%. So even with the traditional banking and financial services, for example, even these services are getting very much more, democratized, like with the models cryptocurrency companies and blockchain companies are bringing. For example, even if we have to help the very poor communities, for example, in Africa or even in Latin America, so people can actually, so instead of going to a single huge body where they can ask for loans and bank or loans or any kind of debts, people can crowd lend them. So with crowdfunding, there are also crowd lending services. And I mean, people like even the common people like us want to contribute to this part of the world, regardless of the economic inequality which is existing. but we want somewhere, at least, the people involved in this blockchain community to, to have that sense of opportunity and equality between people, where they can produce and we can help them producing. So do you think that blockchain can help this vision to be like implemented more than
Hugely.
the traditional system? Hugely?
I'm just back from a conference in Macau, actually, on decentralized finance. And it's so exciting. I met so many people there. A big shout out to Roscoe Pattison from Wosendo. But they're looking at financial inclusion, making it easy, because everybody has a mobile phone. Everybody has a mobile phone. And that's interesting, because you think mobile phones are the preserve of, the privileged. No, everybody has a mobile phone, but they don't have a bank account. But if they have a mobile phone, they can send and receive currencies. They can earn currencies. So it's huge. I can remember when the first wave of refugees hit Europe. There were a lot of people reacting badly against it, because they were coming from, war-torn Syria. Because, why are they coming over here? Because they're going to be killed if they stayed in Syria. And then somebody said, those two things. I was at a talk with an immigration expert. And the two of the biggest complaints were that it was young men in the first wave, and they all had mobile phones. And the guy said, who was explaining, who worked there, of course it's young men, because it's very hard to move a family from a war-torn area. It's so hard. So, of course, the young men are going to come first. That is just a natural evolution of what happens when there is crises and war and, terrible disaster in a country.
100%.
And secondly, if you're going to cross the ocean in a little boat, you are going to buy a mobile phone. You're going to make sure at least you have something that's going to help you communicate when you get over there. So the same way, we realize now that this mobile phone that has changed the world fundamentally in the last 10 years. And I know some of it's not always good because of the screen time and the bullying and all the stuff that we're all not, kids aren't playing in the streets, whatever, they're watching their phones. But it's a huge way. Everybody, even in Africa, where you have very poor communities, they have phones. And if they have phones, they can transfer value. And if you think about it, like you and I, presumably, I'm making assumptions here now, but we have access to bank accounts and to credit. Well, I don't have access to much credit, an ex-bankrupt. But, we live in a developed world where there's access. And if you're living in a country or even a community where you don't have a bank account, how do you borrow money? How do you borrow money to buy a car, to buy education for your kids, or to set up a business? It's a fundamental right to have, when you've got intelligence and enthusiasm and energy, but you can't borrow value of some kind. It's because it's very hard to earn enough to pay for everything you need in life. You need to borrow from many things in life. And that's where cryptocurrencies come in.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as like the time is progressing, I also feel that, even like the education expenses or healthcare, they are like going off the charts, and they are like increasing. They are multiplying, not even increasing. They are just multiplying. Yeah, and even the common man, and especially in the developing countries or third world countries, I mean, people are still not. I mean, if they are multiplying and they're not able to multiply their wealth, or even a simple way, find a way to transfer their money quickly. Yeah. So I mean, this access will be like completely taken from them. Even the basic services like education and healthcare will be taken from them. I mean, they will be like completely separated. So okay, going to the next question, so cryptocurrencies, for example, they are somewhere adding this additional benefit of quickly transferring. I mean, the way they have made the transfer of the value so easy with the help of blockchain and also transparent. So do you think that what do you think that how they are going to, I should say, thrive or survive in this environment where, different countries are having completely different stances on it?
Well, it's not easy. And fear is a big barrier in terms of institutions fear cryptocurrencies and blockchain because they see it like the whole sort of anarchistic, mad, sort of crazy people. And I know I did say we blow the banks out of the water. I can live with the banks too, as long as they clean up their act. But it's scary, and change is always scary. And you know the expression, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So the same way, if you are in charge of a country, a sovereign or an institution, whatever, you don't want to give away your power by allowing cryptocurrencies become the de facto standard of exchanging value. So there is definitely pushback against it. There's also, because it's seen, because it challenges institutions, there's a lot of FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt term. And I know that, like, I'm a journalist, and I spoke recently, well, actually it was early start of this year, with a group head of newspapers here in Ireland. And I wanted to pitch him writing about cryptocurrency and blockchain. And he goes, "It's a Ponzi scheme." I'm going, no, it's not a Ponzi scheme. And this is an intelligent man. He's the group editor of these papers. And I went, no, it's not. And it's a technology. It's a way of thinking. It's projects. And yes, it's a way to fundraise. And I mean, the thing that gets me, people say, oh, it's like all these scams and all this fundraising. People can spend money on the horses. They can spend money on the track. People can spend their money how they want to. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm sorry people invested in projects that never really materialized. But, I mean, people ask me, do I have any investment advice? I'm going, well, do you normally invest on the stock exchange? Do you normally bet on shares? Fine, if you do, but if you don't, well, have a flutter. But the golden rule is only flutter that which you can afford to lose. That's kind of what you do.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
And so I'm not saying that, I mean, huge money's poured into those projects, and then a lot of them just stopped.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people intentionally were planning on running away with the money. But I imagine if you are a broke student one day and you've got billions in the bank the next day, it can change people's minds. So, it's not, and the thing is, of course, people have no comeback, because in an ICO, you're not buying equity, you're just buying tokens, which is,
utilities.
But having said that, even though it's kind of messy and a lot of money was lost and made, it is interesting, because the basic principle behind it is that you can fundraise and crowdfund with ordinary people for ordinary projects. So the actual principle was before that. Otherwise, if you needed VC money is very hard to get, very hard got. So this way, I mean, and there is also, it's not just with cryptocurrencies, there's lots of digital projects around where people can crowdfund into different projects, and it's not just the Kickstarters, it's some financial ones and different ones. And it is interesting to think that, the banks don't control everything. So even though a lot of money was raised, wasted, lost, spent, whatever, it's very interesting. And I think the next wave of fundraising will be interesting, because people will start off with, maybe go back to the old-fashioned equity. So you invest the money, you get part of the business. And then they might crowdfund after that, just for the joy of it. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. Don't gamble that which you don't have, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this is, so two things. One was that, with the advent of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and ICO models, everything went from, again, like with the traditional startups, it used to happen with like a proper seed round, VC round, Series A round, and it used to happen like with only the bigger participants of the market, the bigger investors were able to like make deals. But now with this, even the common man, like even the middle class person who owns like even a bit of Bitcoins, like a half of Ethereum, they can just invest it there. So they can at least become a part, or in expectation of that they will earn in future. But okay, the second point was that second point is the main purpose why we are having this interview. So there is all sorts of, I would say completely false sentiment and understanding about the cryptocurrencies. Like you said, it is a Ponzi scheme, or some say it is like just a multi-level, marketing or earning scheme, or some people say, especially in Asia and India, we hear this, that Bitcoin is not backed by anything. So why do you think it should? Why should we invest in it if it's not backed by anything? I mean, I just want you to, if you can, like clear these basic. Clear these doubts with a basic definition of cryptocurrencies, and let people understand like what it is backed by, and how it is not a Ponzi scheme, and what is the advantage which blockchain is offering to the cryptocurrencies. I mean, what exactly cryptocurrency is. So coming this from like an expert like you will help them to,
Well, I don't call myself an expert, an enthusiastic advocate, but well, it's interesting. With Bitcoin, its value is in its scarcity. There's 21 million, period. That's it, right? So even gold can't offer you that, because gold, more could be discovered. I know it's technically a finite commodity, but there could be more discovered. And it's interesting, if you think about it, let's do two things. Why is gold precious? Because there's a limited amount, and we have decided as human beings that it is that has a value. But we know in the history of money, it used to be shells, it used to be barter, it used to be salt, it used to be spices. There's a lot of things that have had value for exchange of value throughout the history of money. And so I think what's interesting, I think that Bitcoin is more finite than gold, because that's all there is. It's a mathematical certainty. And then secondly, people say, oh, why would you trust it? Why would you trust modern financial banking systems and fractional lending? I mean, that's what caused the crash in 2008, because the banks took in all their money and then lent it out and couldn't cover what they brought in. I mean, like, if you actually sit back, if you try to explain to a child how banking works, they go, that doesn't sound great. You buy a car, you go to someone else, and they lend you back the car, and they charge you a fee for using your car. That's the same. That's what banks do with our money. So it's and I know we need banks, or we need some sort of financial institution to provide credit and have flows of money. We know that we can't live in a world without banks. I don't want to go bartering my cow for your chicken, or whatever. But it's modern banking is it's not working. It's definitely not working. And also, people talk about the Ponzi and the scheme, whatever. There's so much money laundering done in fiat currencies. We see it all the time. Banks get charged huge fees because they've allowed some cartel to launder all their drug money through, whatever. And even I'm an ex-JP Morgan girl, but JP Morgan owns a ship that was found recently with €1 billion worth or $1 billion worth of drugs on it. The whole ship was coming down in drugs, owned by JP Morgan. So before people start pointing at Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, look at what we have already, and it's not working. I think that's the big point. It's not even like what's right and what's wrong. It's what works. And right now, finance for most people in this world is not working. And even I live in Ireland, which is a developed country, and we are the fastest growing economy in the EU. We have huge problems with credit flow. We have a huge housing problem, crises, not only with homelessness, but also with couples that can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford childcare. They can't afford to buy a house. There's no credit. So you have this in a supposedly modern country that's doing well, huge problems with credit. So there's a whole rake of things that aren't really working. And the banks do not, I'm not saying they have to be social, they don't have to be like a CSR, corporate social responsibility, but they should provide a service, and they're not providing a service in the main at the moment. I mean, there used to be, I met a friend recently, cooperative banks, and cooperative banks have goals other than making profit. So if the cryptocurrencies come through and the blockchain comes through and it makes banks reevaluate, happy days. I don't really need to shoot all the banks or the bankers ever, but I'd like to make them accountable, and I'd like to have better access to finance for people, and that's not, and let it be at a community level. Maybe that's the whole thing about the decentralized finance, is that maybe someone wants to fund a small mechanics garage, and they can do it in the community, and it's a way of transferring value and accounting for everything, so people don't run off with money in the middle of the night, whatever. That's so cool. There's so many more opportunities that are available for people. And at high levels, and also things like houses. In Ireland, we have a big thing about owning your house. I mean, people can't afford houses now. But the whole notion of tokenizing houses, so you can own part of it and rent the rest of it or sell the rest of it. There's like weird and wonderful ways of approaching stuff. I'm going, wow. Because if you think about it, the term mortgage, that's usually the biggest loan people take out. It means a death note, a DEATH note. So you have it till you die. What if we didn't have to take a mortgage out to own a house? What if we could take a loan out that was, we only had to buy half the house, but we still lived in it there's just so many different ways of doing things. And cryptocurrencies, they blow everything up in terms of thinking, or unthinking the world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with this, again, two things. First thing was that I mean, so this entire comparison which is done with Bitcoin, that it is kind of supporting more criminal activities, like, you know, money laundering and even in the crimes, like maybe terrorist funding or whatever. I mean, I don't completely support the fact of terrorist funding, but especially like money laundering. I mean, the money laundering happening with US dollars or even any fiat currency is like times what is happening or might be happening with Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So the comparison can't even be made. I mean, it is. I mean, it's like, you know.
Yeah.
That high to low. Yeah.
And where there is value, there will always be bad actors. Of course there will. Where there is value, whether it's your dollar note in your pocket or your Bitcoin on your phone, there will be bad actors. And in fact, if you think about it, apart from the privacy coins, and even I think they can be undone too as well. But if you have an access to a wallet, it can be traced. So it's actually less anonymous than cash or, you know, banking institutions.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that the need of these KYC and AML you know, practices, these wallets and exchanges have to do, they stand a place in this environment, right? I mean, to restrict the money laundering activities.
Yeah, well, on the one hand, I'm going, I see why, you know, because you know, you want to make sure that you're dealing with someone who's not necessarily peddling drugs to kids, whatever. So exactly. I get that. On the other hand, increasingly, as I get older, I'm kind of going, well, why do people need to know how you're spending your money? And I mean, John McAfee just launched his new decentralized exchange, and he's so funny. There is no KYC on it, whatever. And he goes, if the SEC comes after him, they eventually find him. He says, I'm just going to say, oh, did I not get their details? Oh, silly me. You know, I know it's a bit of an extreme example, but sometimes, like, we live in a world where surveillance is, oh my goodness, so scary that maybe we need to take a step back and regain our privacy. And it's, you don't, because, you know, the common thing they say is, well, if you've nothing to be ashamed of, you know, why do you need privacy? But privacy is the center of a democratic world, because if you don't have privacy, then you have surveillance. And then, so it's not that I mean, yeah, I believe in KYC, and I don't peddle drugs to kids. So, you know, I'm quite happy in some regards, but it's not the end of the story. And there are brighter minds out there who will unravel and unpick this thought process. And I'm not quite sure where it's going. Slow burner, take me a long time to figure out by myself, but I'm sure someone's going to come through and say, do you know what? This is a better way of doing our society. And I think stepping back from this surveillance is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, and I mean, adding to your point, like, what is happening with our data, our information, the way it is being sold, or I would just say like traded with other companies. And I mean, even like the smallest thing, like our financial transactions, our likings and dislikings on what we are spending our money on and whatnot. I mean, to certain thing, I think, even a common person and a common man should be given that privacy. That, I mean, it's my thing. It should be given the freedom.
Apparently, someone was saying to me recently they're applying for a mortgage, and the bank went through their bank statements with a fine tooth comb. And if they had, there's a Paddy Power is a big online betting company here. If they had an account with Paddy Power, they weren't getting the mortgage. I'm going, so someone, you know, I don't know, maybe they spend 20 euros a week, whatever, on the GGs, and a bank's going to say you're a risk for not repaying, you know. I'm kind of going, with that level of intrusion into your life, I know they have to do due diligence, but that does seem crazy. And they look at everything you spend, and anything they don't like, you're not getting that mortgage.
Makes sense.
That sounds a bit horrible to me.
Yeah. So okay. So in this entire scenario, like, these bigger corporations are taking a little control over our data, but with this, like, there are still, I mean, we as a community, we also want to control the scammy activities or the criminal activities happening with the cryptocurrencies. So where do you think, like, the role of a bigger legislations come into place, like, for example, countrywide or international regulations? Yeah,
that's a really good question. And do you know why it's a really good question? I think that nobody who lives in the developed world, apart from Mr. McAfee, would argue against regulation, because regulation normally protects, the whole idea is it protects people and communities and countries and whatever. I think the problem that we have here now, the regulators are trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And I know from speaking to legal experts and regulatory experts, the biggest problem is they're not really understanding what it is. They're afraid of what it is. So they're trying to clamp it down as it is, rather than saying, okay, this has some really good points. We don't like it when it does this, that, and the other. We don't like this because that may be impact. But let's figure out how to make it work in what it is, because it's not an apple, it's an orange. And until regulators figure out that it's an orange we're dealing with here, which has bitter skin and needs to be peeled, you know, it's not an apple. And I think then they will make better decisions about how to regulate it. And yes, I mean, we live in a world that's regulated. So, you know, there are speed limits on our roads, you know, there's a reason for it, because most of our rules, a lot of our rules are there for the protection of the citizens, and they're voted on and they're brought in, whatever. But I think the regulators have stopped looking at it as an apple and realize it's an orange. And once they do that, I think that'll make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I completely agree. And I will say that, I mean, this is exactly what is happening in India right now. So there are, for example, this case happening between the Supreme Court and let's say just the crypto community. So the case is between the crypto community and the RBI, the Central Bank of India. So they kind of posed a ban on all the banks and ordered them not to partner with any of the cryptocurrency companies or exchanges for this matter. And so the case which is happening is in this direction, that RBI wants to restrict the use or even trading or any kind of activity related to cryptocurrencies. And the crypto community of India is saying that don't restrict them. We ourselves want it to be regulated. We also want that any kind of criminal activities regarding cryptocurrencies, they should be controlled, they should be curtailed. And I mean, we want that the government or any kind of penal action, I mean, government should put penal actions or any kind of like a strict law to restrict the criminal activities, but don't take the entire freedom of working with or kind of trading with the cryptocurrencies from people. I mean, again, in the freedom direction, I mean, it is the financial freedom of people to decide what they want to trade in. Even if it is volatility can also be turned out in a positive direction if used smartly. But we want the entire ecosystem to be, you know, regulated. And this is, I think, what most of the people in the world feels.
But it's not funny that banks make decisions.
I'm sorry?
Banks make it here in Ireland too as well. Last year, they withdrew checking facilities to anybody involved in cryptocurrency business. And the irony, one of them that they withdrew the checking facility, the banking facility from, was an exchange, a crypto exchange based corp that had been sponsored by one of the pillar banks here, that had won all the startup awards. And its biggest sort of tagline for its success was to say to its customers, look, you can move money from your pillar bank into our account. So it's not dodgy. All the KYC is done. And then they pull the plug from them. They have to find another bank in a separate area to be able to do the deals. So I would say, who died and made the banks king? You know, how can they just decide what they want to do? And secondly, yes, by all means regulate, because there's a lot of, and you think of it too as well, sorry, I'm jumping here now, but you go to countries like Venezuela, where the local currency is worth nothing. So people have to use cryptocurrencies to exchange value. Otherwise, their money lands in the account and it's gone the next day. It's worth nothing. So people need this. This is important.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, the countries like which is having like really high inflation or the economies are not performing well, people of these countries are finding Bitcoin as a safe haven, and in like storing at least storing their money in Bitcoins or other cryptocurrencies, because the inflation will not hit Bitcoin as hardly as their local currencies, right? Yeah, but coming back to like Asian scenario where, you know, China has already banned, but yeah, these days we are seeing people in this Asian crypto community are getting quite optimistic, because Xi Jinping said some good things about blockchain and about their entire digital currency environment. So as a cryptocurrency, you know, community and the companies here, what do you think that we companies and like together can take a step to, you know, help people or to like promote the adoption, in simple words, of the cryptocurrency?
Well, we all have different roles. I know what my role is. I am passionate about this area, and I think it's an amazing, amazing opportunity for the world to rediscover itself. So I'm very excited for my children, for everybody's children. So I know that my role is to try and tell people outside the bubble, because sometimes it's not enough just to talk amongst ourselves, because we all, you know, we all agree, we think along the same lines pretty much, whatever. I think it's very important to ensure that people outside the bubble understand it. So when I go, I live in the countryside here in Ireland, and I go to, you know, horse events, hunter trials, or point-to-points, whatever. I talk about cryptocurrencies. They almost see me coming, oh no, we're going to talk about cryptocurrencies. These are horsey people. They don't know anything about cryptocurrencies. But I want, and I was out on Monday with a bank holiday here, a public holiday here. It was so funny because the son of one of my friends was there, and he's only like 13. And I said, have you heard about Bitcoin? He said, no. I said, you haven't heard about Bitcoin? He went off, got his mom's phone, starts Googling it. And I said, go up and find out about Bitcoin. And his mom is a bank official. She's like going, oh no, what have you just said to him? And I said, he needs to know about Bitcoin. The kids need to know about Bitcoin. So what can we do? We can cherish and support, especially the good projects that are coming through. I'm not so concerned. The scammy stuff out there, that doesn't really bother me so much. I think the good projects that are actually doing good things, let's support them, get behind them. And let's tell everybody, tell as many people as you can outside this whole sector. Because when you're in it, you're in it. I mean, I've just come back from London. Great fun. Everybody talking the same language. It was wonderful. It was a lot of fun, a lot of in-jokes too as well, whatever. But you step outside the conference center, someone in the street doesn't understand. So we really, for those of us who want this to work, we have to start telling the non-crypto, the non-blockchain people why this is important.
Yeah, 100%. Like right education and right awareness is extremely important in this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, just the last question. I mean, so taking it back to like a global scale, like where do you feel this entire blockchain and cryptocurrency industry as a whole is lacking, or I mean, what are the shortcomings it is facing to push itself or to boost itself in the modern environment?
I think the biggest impediment, and certainly for me, even though I work in this area, ease of use. Like it's all these hurry up people. I know there's different projects out there that are making it easy to send money, like clicking. I want clickable money. I don't want to all those keys and stuff like that. And then it's funny, someone else said to me, actually it was John McAfee again, he said, you are your own bank. Now, I don't know, am I copying that? I don't want to be my own bank necessarily. I want to be able to not, if I lose something, for someone to help me find it. And I know that sounds, maybe it's an age thing, maybe I grew up with that area, but I think it needs to be easier. It needs to be easier, certainly. I mean, I can understand the power of it's your own bank. I do understand that, but I'm not going, could someone else mind that for me? And actually, a friend of mine, again, actually I mentioned him again, Roscoe Pattison, he's an educator as well, he's Australian, living in Vietnam. He's an educator, and he's educated thousands of people on how to set their wallets and how to get their first bit of Bitcoin, whatever. And he said, invariably, these are people who are interested. They come, have a break, they come back and say, can we skip the bit about the private keys and the public keys? And like he's going, what? And I understand that. And maybe I am those people. I just want to be able to click stuff and say, there you go, and have it come out of my account and into your account. And so is that easy? So the engineers and the programmers and the developers and the futurists make it easy. Make it easy for us old folk. And presumably the younger guys will have no problem understanding. But if it's easy, it must make it easy. Yeah,
100%. I mean, if it will be easy, then it will be, I mean, even then the non-crypto community will embrace it more. Like if it is easy, they want the entire ecosystem to get easier, to get more accessible. And
yeah, I think ease of use for me is the biggest thing, because when I transfer coins, and I don't do very often, I don't have very many coins, But when I do, I'm like going, oh, hit the button. So, it's make it easier. Make it easier.
100%. Yeah, even if this happen, like, I mean, so the cryptocurrency in itself is a very big word. Yeah. So whenever, like, in my early years, like when I was researching for blockchain, and I started giving like sessions to people on blockchain, to lawyers, to social media, like marketers, and different industry, and they want to understand like what blockchain is. And suddenly, like, someone will come, can you tell me what blockchain is? I saw this video and I saw this, sessions, and I read about it. I got totally confused. And then you go them explaining step by step, and they're like, that's it? I'm like, yeah, that's it. It's not that hard to understand. You just need to understand from the very basics. It just keeps building up.
Yeah. And it's true. And people reach out, first off, they'll go onto YouTube to look for stuff. And there's so many YouTube videos where people are showing them people how to trade. I mean, trading does my head in. I'm like, whoa, candlesticks, whatever they're called. And I think that's scary too as well. Oh, do I have to trade? No, you don't have to trade. But I think that can be scary.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's in every industry now. Like, greed is driving certain sector of the market. And the farther we can get our industry from it.
Yeah, I mean, there will always be people who trade. That's fine. It's not me. Yeah. And a lot of people don't trade. They do whatever they do. They just want to use something to transfer value. They just want whatever the money is, whether it's a local fiat or whether it's a cryptocurrency.
Exactly.
Or it's a cow.
I mean, cryptocurrency is not just about trading. It has like a enormous use case, attached with it. And I think, with time, we need to explore all the dimensions it can touch.
Well, I love like the really crazy stuff, like Dogecoin. I mean, that's mad. But there's a value there. And I'm going, that's nice too. That's people who decided to come together to value something. I'm going, ooh, that's nice. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I like that quirky bit about it, that it's like, so I could create my own token and maybe be worth something.
It will have value someday.
Yeah, maybe I will.
There's like President Trump coin on the market, and people are still trading them. I mean, why would somebody do that? President Trump coin? I'm like, okay, that's fine.
I might skip that one.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. So anyways, it was really great talking with Jillian. I think it was a very informative interview. And
thank you very much.
Our viewers will love to know your views more in the future.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll stay connected. And if there's a case we are launching Expert Series number 2.0, we will surely connect you again.
Brilliant. That'll be lovely. Thank you for letting me rant and rave. Always my pleasure to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right. Cheers. All right.